In today's video, I'm going to give you everything that you need to know about how you can invest in the S&P 500 from the UK. We're going to break this down into three different parts. Number one, what the S&P 500 actually is. Number two, how you can invest into it. And number three, what platforms in the UK will actually let you do this. Let's get into it. All right, so first things first, let's actually talk about what the S&P 500 actually is. And in simple terms, the S&P 500 is an index made up of the 500 largest publicly traded companies in America. Basically, what I'm saying here is that it's not just one company, it's actually a collection of 500 different ones all across various industries such as tech, healthcare, energy, and more. Now, this is actually why people love it and why you've probably heard about it before, because instead of investing in just one company and taking on more risk, the S&P 500 lets you spread your investments across 500 companies, and this means that if one company isn't doing too well, others might be doing better, so overall your risk will always be lower than just buying one stock. Now, when it comes to the companies that actually make up this S&P 500, you've probably heard of some of them. What we're talking about here are massive businesses like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and even Google. These companies basically make up the majority of the index, and a lot of the index's performance depends on how well these big players are doing. The reason why I say this is because when you invest into the S&P 500, which we'll get to shortly, your investment is actually going to be weighted by market cap, which basically means that the bigger companies like Apple and Microsoft have a bigger influence on the index than the smaller ones. For example, if Apple goes up, the whole index could actually go up. But let's say a smaller company goes up within the index that doesn't have as much weighting, the change won't be as noticeable. So now that we know what the S&P 500 is, how do you actually invest into it? Well, the thing is, you can't invest directly into the S&P 500 itself, but don't worry, there's an easy way around that. What you can do instead is invest into something called an ETF, which stands for an exchange traded fund. This is basically a type of fund that will track and mirror the performance of the S&P 500, meaning that when you invest into the ETF, you're actually buying a piece of all of the 500 companies within that index. Now, one of the most popular S&P 500 ETFs that you can buy within the UK is going to be the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, also known as VUSA. And whilst I can't give you a direct recommendation as to whether you should choose this fund or not, this is actually the fund that I personally invest into, and I've seen some steady gains of it over the past 10 years or so. But don't worry, if this isn't the one that you want to go for, there are many other ETFs out there to choose from, but realistically, they will all achieve the same thing in tracking the S&P 500's performance, and I would say it's very much down to personal preference as to which one you choose. All right, so now you know what the S&P 500 is and you know how to invest into it. But how do you actually do this from the UK? Well, first things first, you're going to need what is called an online trading app. And just like your options on the different funds that you have to buy, there are also plenty of options of these apps available within the UK, and we're seeing new ones crop up all of the time. However, if you did want a personal recommendation, one thing that I can actually give you is that I would suggest going with an app called Trading 212. It's super easy to use. They don't really charge you commission fees for buying and selling stocks, and it's designed for absolute beginners. Also, as a small bonus, if you sign up using my link down below, you'll get a free share worth up to £100 when you open your account for free, but do remember your capital will always be at risk. But essentially, once you have signed up to a trading app, whether that's Trading 212 or not, you can go ahead and search for the S&P 500 ETFs within your app, and you'll most likely notice that Vanguard one called VUSA that we spoke about earlier. And from here, it's simply a case of choosing how much you want to invest and go through and actually buying it. Once you've done that, that is pretty much it. You now know exactly what the S&P 500 is, how you can invest into it using ETFs like VUSA, and how you can do it from the UK using platforms like Trading 212. Hope you found this video useful, and I'll see you next time.